Okay, we're going to go ahead and get going. Thanks for joining me today for this edition of Perspective on Athletics, Big Thinking for Small Colleges. I'm Mark Majeski and host these episodes weekly. And you can find us on iTunes and also on our website at majeskiathleticconsulting.com. So hope you'll follow us and participate and take part in these episodes. Today I want to talk about something I think is very important from a bigger picture planning standpoint. And this time of year, athletic directors are sitting around with a lot of things to do, but they have 3 or 4 days where they can relax a little bit and start to think about the year ahead before they need to hit the ground running. And what happens often is that it's not uncommon for athletic departments to kick the year off with a staff retreat of some kind, half day, full day, or sometimes longer. But it's a way to get people together, get them back from any kind of summer break or 10-month or 9-month or 11-month contract, and everybody's back usually by the start of August. And they want to get everybody focused and talk about what's going to be important and really set the tone for the year ahead. That's all great, but the problem is it's not easily done. And unless you take the time to plan properly and really think about what you're trying to accomplish with a staff retreat, unfortunately, many people sit around and think, oh, this is a waste of time. What am I doing here? And it really doesn't do any good. And in some cases can do more harm than good. So today I want to talk about helping you conduct an effective and engaging staff retreat by putting in a little bit of planning time and some keys for you to think about as you plan your retreat so that you can have people feel engaged and leave the staff retreat feeling like they learned something, it was a great use of time, and bring the staff together and focus them for the coming year ahead. So we want to jump right in here, and I think in order to plan effectively, there's really 3 things that you need to be thinking about, especially related to a staff retreat of this kind. Some of these concepts really relate to any kind of meeting planning, whether it's a monthly or weekly staff meeting of some kind, but we're talking about in the context here of a bigger meeting, half day, full day, some sort of retreat where you're really trying to engage people and talk about some bigger picture things, which retreats are usually about. So there are really 3 keys I think you need to think about here, and the first one really is probably the most important, and that is being very clear about what your purpose is. You need to be able to define clearly what the objectives for the retreat are. What is it that you're trying to accomplish? What do you want people to walk away from the retreat with? Knowledge, training, a sense of belonging or focus. You need to be very, very clear about what it is you're doing. Because if you just want to get people together and socialize and share thoughts about what they've been up to over the summer, then don't have a staff retreat. Have a barbecue. Have people over your house and just have it be purely social. But if you want more, you need to be very, very clear about defining those outcomes you're hoping to get by bringing everybody together. You need to find ways to engage the people that will be participating in the retreat. It's fine to expect them to want to be there and offer up their opinions, but we all know that there are probably staff members that spend most of the meeting looking at their phones or looking like they would rather be someplace else, anywhere else, but where they are at the staff retreat. The other thing is, you all know that there are people that like to talk, and they tend to dominate the floor, dominate meetings, get on their soapbox. And then there's other people that are the quiet ones that really are uncomfortable speaking up, even in a group of people that they know well. They just are not comfortable. And you need to be able to manage this situation. And engaging people really takes some skill to make sure that you get everybody involved so that it's a balanced in group where people who are comfortable talking as well as people that are not comfortable talking, that they all feel that their opinions are valued and that they have something to say that's meaningful. And lastly, you need to keep it alive. And what I mean by that is, and I've done this several times myself, where conduct a staff retreat, and you may have the best staff retreat where everything was going well. People were engaged. You really talked about some meaningful things that really energized the group. It focused everybody, and everybody left the staff retreat feeling so good. And then you never talked about it before. So you never talked about it again once the meeting was over. And if that happens, people are left wondering, well, what the heck did I just invest all that time for? So, when you're thinking about your staff retreat and you think about after the staff retreat, are staff members going to take away information and skills that they're going to use in the upcoming year? Are they going to need the information or need the training that you provide them with in their jobs in the year ahead? And also, 2 or 3 months into the school year, are they going to even remember what the retreat was all about and the topics that were talked about? You need to be aware of these things, because whatever you do at the staff retreat, you need to be able to move it along into the school year and revisit it on a regular basis. That's going to keep those important things alive. Now, a few ways that you can do this, or at least make it a little bit easier on yourself as you're starting to think about your retreat and then get into the planning mode here. You need to begin with the end in mind, and that really is talking about, okay, what do I want people to get out of this retreat? What's the purpose? Why are we even bringing people together? So planning with a purpose is a very, very important piece to this, because if you don't put the time into planning, you're not going to be able to have a very good retreat. Now, a key for an effective retreat is that each individual that's participating needs to find something that is going to make their investment of time worthwhile. If they're going to be there for 4 hours or 6 hours or 8 hours or whatever it's going to be, they want to get something out of it. Okay, so BYO, your return on investment, bring your own. People need to come to this meeting and be able to clearly identify what they're going to get out of it. Okay, and they need to be able to see, oh, okay, this is why we're here. This is going to be interesting and helpful to me. And they need to be able to see that in return on their investment of time very clearly. Now, in order to, I think, get that, you need to not plan this retreat in a vacuum. You can't just do it all by yourself. You need to engage people on your staff in the planning and development of the retreat agenda. And this includes coaches, assistant coaches, support staff, and even student athletes. And even though student athletes are not going to be participating in your staff retreat, most likely, their perspective is important. And coaches and staff need to be aware on a regular basis what student athletes are thinking and feeling these days. So that should be incorporated into the retreat agenda in some fashion. If you're involving outside people from outside the department, development office, admissions office, or whoever it might be, talk to them, because as they are planning their discussion, their presentations, you want to make sure they are very clear about what you are trying to accomplish with the overall retreat, and they can better tailor their discussion, their presentation to help support what you're trying to do with your retreat. The point is, you can't do this by yourself. If you want to engage people, you need to be able to involve them in the planning process. And lastly, with regard to planning, you need to have an agenda that is tight and flexible. And what I mean by that is the agenda needs to be very clear, needs to be structured and focused on what you're trying to accomplish with regard to your retreat objectives. You need to be able to plan very carefully to make sure you allow enough time to get through the various things on your agenda. There's nothing worse than having a packed agenda of 10 things and you only get through 2. That doesn't say a whole lot about your planning, but also leaves people wondering, well, were those other 8 things really important or not? So you need to plan carefully to make sure your time allotment is sufficient, but also you need to have a flexible enough agenda, and you need to be skilled enough as a facilitator to, if the discussion is productive and there is a lot of good things happening, don't cut short discussion and dialogue just because you're at the end of the allotted time. You need to be able to go with that and make sure you're capturing all the great energy and ideas that are going to come from that type of discussion. So you need to set things out very clearly and in a structured way, but be skilled enough to allow for the creativity that's going to come out and be flexible enough to roll with those ideas and still get through your agenda. Now, engaging your staff can be a challenge, and we all know that, because there are people that dread these types of things. There are people that love these types of things because they like to talk and share and be a part of these things, but it's not for everybody, and everybody's different. You need to know your personalities on your staff, and because some people are going to engage more easily than others, and in different ways, you need to create multiple opportunities for people to actively engage, so that you're going to find some way for every single person in there to feel comfortable sharing their thoughts and feeling valued as a part of the process. So I think there's a few different ways you can do that. But the first thing is, people need to connect and identify their individual investment in the day. So I mentioned this earlier, is that people need to be able to see a return on their investment. They also need to be able to state very clearly what they hope to accomplish and get out of the retreat. And one effective way is at the start of the retreat, after you might introduce why you're there and make a few announcements about what you're hoping to do, is that you go around the room and you ask each person there to make a statement about what they hope to get out of the day, what they hope they will learn, and what they think they can bring to the retreat agenda. And the purpose for this is really twofold. One is that it just gets people speaking in a very simple, comfortable, non-threatening way. It just asks them to make a statement about what they hope to get out of the retreat agenda. And secondly, it commits them to some sort of outcome. If they are going to state publicly what they hope to get out of it, they are going to put themselves on the hook, and they're going to have to invest some attention and energy to make sure that they reach that outcome. And so it really is a way to have each person commit themselves to some sort of action, and that's going to require them to engage. Second thing is, I think you need to be conscious of people's comfort level and help them ease into the day. You can't just dive right in and expect people to start talking and exchanging ideas and offering up suggestions, especially those that are not as comfortable doing that sort of thing. So you need to make sure that people are comfortable and are able to share their ideas without feeling compromised or uncomfortable in any way. So an easy way to do that is create some sort of icebreaker. Even though people know each other in a room, find some way that you can just ask somebody to talk briefly about something. And one thing that I have done in the past is just I asked people to share something with the group that they think nobody else in the room knows about them. So it might be that they've played piano since they were 3 years old, or whatever it might be. It's a way to get them talking. It's a way to get them sharing something about themselves. And it's a way to just take away that anxiety of speaking and sharing in front of a group. So it's a great way to just ease into the day, so that hopefully once they've done this, when you get to something where you're going to expect that they are participating and engaging in a discussion, the anxiety is lessened because they've already been talking in front of the group. Lastly, there's a saying that variety is the spice of life. And I think that is really true. But I think when you're talking about a retreat agenda, you need to be very conscious of the fact that people's brains just need to be stimulated, and it needs to change its environment. And you need to do a variety of things so that people can stay engaged, even if they start off engaged. If they're sitting there just listening to somebody speak at them at the front of the room for 4 hours, they're going to tune out. There's just no way around it. So a couple things you can do. One, make sure that you break the retreat agenda into manageable parts, maybe 45 minutes to an hour of one particular topic. break and then move on to something else. And not just varying the topic and categorizing things into various areas, but also the type of activity or the format. So for instance, you might have somebody speaking to the group or presenting with a presentation of some sort, but then move on to something where you're going to have everybody break into small groups and have some group discussion and then report back to the group. Having them physically get up and move from their seats to a different location is helpful as well. Anything where you can get their bodies moving, get their brains moving into something new. Nobody wants to just sit there for 4 hours listening to people talk at them. So you need to find ways to keep it fresh. Prearranging your discussion groups or your small group discussions can be helpful, because if you don't do that, sometimes the people that are friends or buddies or cliquish end up going and talking by themselves, and then you have another group. So you want to do your best to get everybody engaged and talking with people that they may not normally talk to or hang out with. So you want to make sure that there's a good blend. And you as the facilitator of this needs to take extra care to make sure that the group is commingling, and it's not just the same old group of people talking and there are 3 or 4 people that just haven't said a word all day. It's your job to help people engage, but by doing some proper planning and doing some things to structure the retreat, it'll happen more easily and a little bit more naturally for some people. Keeping it alive is the last concept here, and again, what I mean by that is that you can have the best retreat in the world, and you can spend 4 or 5 hours and walk away with people feeling good, people feeling focused, people ready to go do their job. And then if you never talk about some of those things again, or you never even refer back to the retreat, people are going to go, wait a second, what did I just do? I just invested a day of my time and I thought it was something important, but now we've never talked about it again. So you need to be able to maintain that energy, carry it forward through the school year, and also make sure people are still connecting back with those important things that were discussed at the retreat. The retreat should be about things that are important to people's jobs, important to the department, important to student athletes, and important to the institution. And those are things that they need to be aware of every single day they're doing their job. So there ought to be ways that you can connect the retreat and all the great energy that came from it to the day-to-day jobs once the school year starts. And one way you can do that is simply end the meeting with a beginning. So what I mean by that is part of the agenda of the retreat should be some sort of wrap up with a reflection, recap, where you're capturing all the things that have just happened in the retreat. And you're writing down the key things that people have talked about, thanking people for their participation, acknowledging their ideas and values. And you're coming away with a list of things on a board or a sheet of paper. It says, these are the things that we just talked about. Are we all in agreement with this? Yes. Well, great. You take those things, and those are the things that you carry forward. A lot of times they will logically and naturally fall into some sort of theme, and it's easy to take a theme and run with it, or a tagline of some kind, something that is memorable, easily identifiable, and will allow people, when they see it or hear it, to connect back to that retreat. You don't want to lose that energy, and the trigger that you're looking for is going to connect them emotionally and intellectually, at least, back to that retreat and all the important things that you talked about. Dropping an anchor is kind of a similar concept, but what I mean by that is those things that are important, that theme, that concept that you're going to carry through, needs to be in front of people regularly. And at your regular staff meetings, whether it's monthly or whenever, the things that you've talked about at the retreat should be present. If it's not an agenda item because it's something that you're acting on throughout the school year, at least the theme, the tagline, the words, the concepts should be a part of the agenda in its written form, or on a whiteboard during the meeting, something. But at every opportunity you bring everybody together, you need to draw them back to those important concepts that were discussed. And people invested very important time in developing when you're at your staff retreat. Finally, evaluating and assessing, I think, is a part of what you do with your staff anyways. But going back to why you're even having a retreat in the first place, it's to talk about and discuss and think about those things that are important, student athletes and the institution and our jobs and why we're doing these things. And all those things are important to people's jobs day to day. And if that's the case, what you've talked about at your staff retreat needs to be talked about every month at staff meetings or every other opportunity, but it also becomes part of the people's performance evaluation process, because if these things are important to the department, it should be an important part of their jobs, and they should be developing their annual objectives, that some of which should be connected to those retreat concepts. So you need to be able to identify those things, and people need to incorporate those things into their annual performance objectives. So at the end of the year, you're connecting back to the retreat and what we talked about in August as being important, and here's how you connected them individually to your job and those specific objectives that you wrote related to those things. Now, how did we do? And unless you have kept the retreat concepts and these things in front of them throughout the school year, you can't go to the year-end performance review and say, oh, remember these things? And then, criticize them for not doing it. They need to be a part of the year-long discussion about what their jobs are about and how they are doing their jobs with regard to those retreat concepts that you talked about.